Hello, listeners of the Art Versations podcast. Welcome back to Art Versations, a meditative conversation about the artistic process. My name is Bri, like the cheese, your overly sensitive host. Thanking you for tuning in. As always, let's stay connected over Instagram at Art Versations Pod. If you're listening on Spotify, though, you can leave an answer on the community question of each episode. I'm super interested in hearing your thoughts on this week's episode with Katie Adams-Gossage, because boy, we get into some deep, deep topics. Katie is a dance artist who recently worked with Mississauga-based dance theater company Frog in Hand on their summer company program. We begin with hearing about the process behind War of the Worlds Reimagined, which is one of their shows, and some clowning opportunities, and then we dive into Katie's work as an individual creator. This episode definitely felt very meditative for me, and I hope, listener, that you will sink into a comfy chair or go for a long walk as you tune in. I do need to mention that on the day of the recording, there was a massive heat wave in Toronto, so I kept a fan running. The audio engineer in me is cringing, but I really just couldn't let my guest overheat. Listener, I'm so sorry, but I hope you can look past this factor as you join us. Let's hear from Katie Adams-Gossage.
Oh my gosh, loaded question.
We're really stepping on it
yeah.
right away. Even though we've already been talking
right at the
50.
beginning, first question. So this is your 80th podcast?
Something like that. I haven't officially counted, but it's definitely been over 75.
Okay, cool. I'm like, can we talk about you? Like, how'd you get into podcasting?
Yeah,
can we just like switch it up?
Yeah. No one ever asked me that.
No, I want to hear your story. That's my thing. I'm like, or even like when, I don't know if it's already happening, but when we start talking about Frog in Hand, like I want to hear what you think too. And your reaction, like I'm really curious from an audience member's point of view. Anyway, we can save it for when it actually is happening.
I mean, it's already going.
Okay, it's already going. Okay, hello.
No, I when I watched the show, I was like literally on the edge of my seat. Like
really?
And not because of like feeling like I have to stand up straight. Like literally I was like, I need to see everything. Like my head was going like right and left. Yeah. And like I was also at the back of the audience, so I was just like, oh my God, there's so much like it did feel very like immersive, even though we were sitting down, like just like being in that hockey arena. Yeah. It was the kind of show though that like was, I think I told you this, it was like way too short.
Yeah.
Like it felt like I needed
short
more.
Yeah.
Which maybe is a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just so curious to hear, and for the whole summer I was curious to hear like audience perspectives, just because it is like such a different, it has a different way about it, you know? And so I felt like I was fully immersed and like so deep in that way through the whole summer that I was curious often like for the future how audience members would react to that on a first time like encounter, since we were all so deep in it, you know?
You had like months of rehearsal. Right?
Well, we had like 9 weeks, which is full time.
Yeah. So you're like deep in it. It's like hard to get like an outside perspective, I guess.
And even like on our first day of work, Colleen like played us. She had all the audio done because it was the 2020 project.
Yes.
To make those audio tapes. And so she like, it was this amazing first day where she like sat down with us and played and paused and she had the entire thing like already in her head. I should have brought my notebook from the first day. I'm on a new notebook, but I like wrote down everything she said, so I literally had the show like in a journal before we started even.
Oh, I love that.
Making the show. That was
and
really
like getting
cool.
those visuals from the audio.
Yeah, and it was so big. Like her ideas were so big. The first day I was like, oh, okay, this is like really serious. This is like really legit. This is what she's imagining for us. And she already had everything like planned out. She's like, we had learned the Orson Welles monologue like in the audition, so she had that like totally set, and she's like plays it, and she's like, Ryan Lee emerges and he's wearing this exact outfit and he with this exact lighting and this amount of like smoke in the room, and describing the arena already, and like we could all like do the material like that. It somehow sort of like already existed before it even came into reality, which is a really interesting experience
and like exciting to like step into, because you know that like the leader of it is already like so clear on their vision.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I often was just, like, sort of listening in awe to the, like, extent of the process as well. Because I suppose I expected, like, a slightly lower scale production going into the company. Because I was like, we have 9 weeks and there's a show at the end. And what can we make in 9 weeks?
Right.
You know, and that's, like, a lot of time. But it's also not that much time.
No.
And so I hadn't
16 dancers?
Yeah, like I hadn't anticipated that so much would have gone into the final work before even the first day. Like I know that Colleen had been like interacting and knowing she wanted to make something with the like original radio play for a long time before she even made the Reimagined.
Yeah, she like
play.
spoke to me about it like on a podcast episode in 2020.
Yeah, like she was
in lockdown.
Yeah.
Like deep in like her
right?
she was in her closet when she spoke about it.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like definitely been in the works in her brain and transforming through different mediums.
Yes, and something so beautiful that she said that really like brought it to my attention. The last, I guess you wouldn't have been there, but on the Friday before closing night, she had to step in for Rebecca Diab, who plays Colleen's voice in the live version, because Colleen's one of the voice actors. And Colleen had to step in for her, and she had this amazing sort of like reflection or observation that she shared about how she felt like she had existed in that moment like so many times before, because she existed in the conception of the idea, and then she existed as the writer of the text, and then she existed as the voice like acting out what she had written, and then she finally like existed in it as a physical embodiment. And she sort of spoke about how she like had felt it in so many ways, then like sort of on a conceptual level, and then on a like logical like text level, and then how voicing it brought her more like into the reality, or sort of as like an agent in creating the reality, and then to occupy it almost like as a child of this thing that she had made. Oh my god, when she said that, I was like, wow, this is such a profound like statement and experience as an artist, I think,
so
to occupy so much of yourself or so much of a creation. Oh, it's so beautiful.
That is really cool that she like is able to do all of that.
Right. You know? I'm also like, you do everything.
Like not
everything?
Just, you know, be the performer, but also be the vocal and also be the writer and the concept. Like, yeah, like I think one of the great things about this program is that they like bring you into like different facets of performance, like not just like the movement, but I think it's great that they also introduce you to like clowning and like using your voice, and for the last year's program, like actually having people record like parts of the audio, like so
I was
you're not
just
just dancers, like you're truly artists.
Yeah, and I think how Colleen and her like immediate team sort of see it as like they're truly storytellers in whatever medium is like needed to facilitate the story. That's what they do, which was also such like a main part of my experience with them, and why I feel like the creative process especially feels sort of distinct to me, because I'm primarily like a dance artist, physical person. And
is that something that you label yourself as, like, or is that someone that other people have labeled you as?
I think what I mean is in terms of like literally the amount of time I spend doing things. Like if I look at the facts, the primary thing that I do is that. I don't mean it as in that's like my identity at all. I totally mean it as in like the bulk of my experience is doing that for sure.
Are you a kinetic learner? Like, do you learn through movement and
learn like? Can you expand on the question?
Like when you're like in a class or something, would you rather watch someone do it and then put it in your body, or can you listen to someone speak about it and then do it?
I definitely would prefer to watch somebody do it.
Cool.
But I have like reservations about that, because I feel like I've had a lot of experience in dance training where they ask you to learn a certain way, and oftentimes I feel like people get scolded for just standing and watching in order to absorb material. Whereas I'm totally a stand and watch kind of person, because I feel like my entire focus needs to go into something, and then I'm like, Kate, got it, and then I can go do it. Yeah. And so I definitely go back and forth with that sometimes. But yeah, circling back to Colleen, she totally puts, or from my perspective, like puts story before anything else. So I had this new experience with her and with Frog in Hand in general, where I'm so used to like my body being the focus, or I don't know even how to say, like the actual dance of it being the focus, versus I feel like how she sees it, or how I perceive her as seeing it, is like the dance is like the vehicle for the story, so the story always comes first, and if the dance doesn't serve the story, it's like unnecessary, or it will change. And it's the same, really, I feel like she feels the same way too about like even sort of who's dancing what. It's like whatever's needed to serve the story. She talked a lot about it being like an ensemble piece, and whoever's in the right place to serve the story at that time, like that's who does it, which was totally like, it was such a democratic process, which was also really refreshing.
Very refreshing.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of storytellers will cast too soon and then are like, well, I guess you're playing that role, even if you're maybe not correct for it in the entire piece, maybe. Yeah,
she was like, who is going to serve, like, who is going to serve this story, and how are we going to put the story?
I mean, another thing that I really enjoyed is like watching people dance to text.
Right.
Which is
so unique.
So interesting. Yeah. And like the way that, I'm sure you've spoke with her about it, but like the way that someone would say something like Marco Polo, like even just the way that the mark is like said, or is it like shouted, or is it, whispered, like that, it to me when I was watching, like, was so clear in each of your bodies to like literally map out the like linguistics of the text in your body, like the quality of movement that you did, or how far you reached, or something like that. Is that part of the process, or did it come naturally?
I think it was definitely part of the process, and also something that I really liked about that I was reflecting on through the process was, because I have, obviously, as an interpreter in the work, I'm like, I have questions about why we're doing these things and what is going on. And
as you should.
Yeah, of course. And I often I made assumptions about it, possibly going into like mime or something, or like possibly going into like why dance when we could just listen if the dance is going to be exactly what we hear.
Yes.
Yeah. But I feel like Colleen did such a successful job at like letting the movement point out something about the text or about the sound of the text that you wouldn't necessarily notice or feel had the movement not been there. So the movement is in fact vital to the telling of the story.
Yeah,
I
can see that.
I especially feel that in that final duet. I felt like she did a really good job of, and as did the interpreters, like a really good job of finding either like subtleties or nuances in, like you say, like the sound of the text, or even like the concept of the word being said. Those were the things that I really liked. It's so satisfying to hear. And like in the cast, we always talked about it. There's this one move that Suli, who's one of the interpreters in the duet, the text is going, I used to listen to you during the wacky hour and the grind. Okay. Oh my gosh. And the movements that everybody's like, that's my favorite part of the entire show, is when he does this one movement where he's it looks like he's like grinding like an avocado or something. Yeah. But it's so not what the meaning of the text was, but it's just so like so witty and satisfying and smart. I feel like it's really smart what she did.
Yeah, the grind of like a hustle is really what the meaning is, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't remember that exact moment, but I'm sure.
That's okay. It was literally like a millisecond in like a 45-minute show.
It had an impact on all of you.
Yeah. We've just watched it 1,000 times, so we like love that 1 second.
Totally.
But
yeah, it's like I really admire that you're all storytellers. Like I think sometimes, like you were saying, like movement isn't really necessary at a certain moment, or it like becomes too cheesy, or like becomes like oversaturated with like I gotta be moving the entire time,
right?
Which is not human. Like we don't actually constantly move. We do sit and listen. So the moments in the piece like where I could digest what was going on, I mean, for instance, like when everyone was just looking at the body under the tarp after they, I guess, had died. Yeah. And it was just very still, like, and we just heard the broadcast. That was a moment where I was like, oh, we don't need to move here. Or you didn't need to move here. You didn't need to, like, do anything extra. But then you, like, picked up again. And I loved, like, the ensemble moments. They all, like, just everyone together, so heightened. So, yeah.
That's a lot of the feedback that I got, too, after performing. A lot of people were just like, it was so incredible to see 16 people on stage at the same time and often doing the same thing. That's, like, an impactful image to have, especially after what's been going on. Like,
totally.
Just to see so many people together.
Yeah, that collective energy.
Yeah, totally.
Really heightened it.
Yeah.
I feel like we should go back and say exactly what this was, because we've been
Sure, yeah, we just literally went on a tangent without doing anything. But we just flowed so naturally from our like really off mic conversation.
Yeah,
Please, let's introduce us or something.
Going into podcast mode.
The podcast starts now, actually. Thanks.
Yeah.
That was the warm up. Hi.
No, you were a part of the Frog and Hand Summer Company.
I was.
You were one of 16 dancers in War of the Worlds Reimagined, the live show.
Yes.
Which is about Orson Welles' 1938 broadcast. But yeah, you've been in this process since May.
Correct.
I feel like I want to hear a little bit about how like the rehearsals have been going outside most of the time, and like you had just graduated from STDT, so like transitioning out of school into like an actual professional company. What was that like for you?
Oh my gosh, loaded question.
We're really stepping on it right away. Even though we've already been talking
right at the beginning. First question. Maybe I'll start with switching from school to going in. I was like in school on a Tuesday, and then I was with Frog in Hand on the Wednesday. I was I went like day to day, like switch, which was wonderful, and I feel really grateful. But it was definitely huge. I definitely went through more of like an emotional sort of journey or transformation than I thought I would, because I think there's also something about getting to the end of school, at least for me, where it sort of gives you this like, I know who I am, and I just accomplished this big thing, and I know what the world is like, and I'm like at the top of the pack because you've just sort of completed this thing from beginning to end. And then on that Wednesday I was no longer at the top of the pack, or just like at least in my my sort of heart and ego, it sent me for something. I think something about being with new people, new group, new setting, like in terms of, it's a Mississauga-based company, which is awesome, and it makes you, it has this sort of feeling of like summer camp or something like that. You go somewhere to a special place, and everybody puts in the effort to go there so that you can do a special thing. So it sort of has that magical quality to it, but it also meant that I'm not in my comfort zone. I'm not where I know dance to normally be made. I'm not with the people that I know dance with, which was scary and jarring at first, but also I think made for something different also, because it was so different. The thing that I ended up experiencing was different than what I would normally experience. I think of it especially as like, I am 100% sure that something about being outside and being outside of a dance studio made me bond with these dancers in a really different way. I feel like there's some sort of like prescription in the walls of dance studios that makes you like act a certain way, makes you feel about other people a certain way, makes you judge yourself, makes you judge others. Like even if I'm the most, like I was telling you before, like I'm like wellness, like I want to feel good, I want the people around me to feel good. There's still something, I say a light with lightness, there's a toxicity about, you know, dance culture and being in a studio.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Yeah, that just didn't carry over because it was, the setting sort of washed that away. And it washed people's egos away, and it washed judgment away. And oh, it was so beautiful. And starting with the clowning too, like really did something. Like some combination of like the distance, traveling somewhere special to do something special, being outside of the studio, and not starting with dance. I feel like just grounded me in the process in such a different way. And I think also relates to what I was talking about earlier about like finishing dance school and thinking you know what's up and whatever. It's like, oh wait, I don't know what's up, and maybe there's this other more grounded way to feel that has nothing to do with like self-judgment or like I'm good or I'm this or I know, and it's just like a more just like a state of being, a state of togetherness. And we dance, but we don't judge dance, we like make dance, and we don't judge each other, and
there's nothing more humbling than clowning.
Oh my gosh,
I don't know if you felt that,
terrifying.
Like, it's like
so scary.
It's like stand-up comedy in that sense, where like you're literally vulnerable, but at the same time have so much power, right? So like, oh my god, like, and I did clowning online for a little bit, which was like so different from what it actually feels like in the space. But like, I can imagine that you all had to just like break the ice so quickly just to like be able to create something in the moment, a bit or a character of some kind. Like that has always been something that has interested me about clowning, is just like breaking out of our like, I have to be a dancer who doesn't speak, and who has perfect posture all the time. And it was the first thing we did. Like the first morning we were there with Andrew, it was we sat in a circle, and Andrew was like, okay, we're gonna go around and you're gonna tell a really mundane story, but you're gonna tell it really funny. Go. And I was like, no, I will not do that. I refuse. No, of course, I did not do that. No. But it was, in fact, it was like amazingly impressive how quickly all of my peers jumped into it in this inspiring way that made me say to myself, no, we're gonna do it. And I told a mundane story, and I told it really funny, and I told it right away. And so did everybody else. And I feel like that just set the tone for literally the rest of the summer. That we just like, we show up and we do the thing, and we let go of ego, and we let go of judgment. Oh my gosh, it was so, we did clowning, like, at least, so there's a small group of us that did like a clowning show. We did like clowning performance. Yeah, at the Streetsville Bread and Honey Festival. And then we did the Port Credit Farmers Market twice, and we sort of walked Port Credit, and but we did like clowning, like intensive training. Like it is a training thing, right? It was intense, like for sure. For the first like 3 weeks before we started performing. And so I really felt like it was kind of funny. I felt like I knew these clowns, and I knew these people as clowns before I knew them at all as dancers. Like once the clowning training was over and we all started dancing for War of the Worlds, I was like, wait, you guys can dance? Really? Like, I'm so surprised. Like, I don't know. It's like, that wasn't the thing that we had in common. We were able to just bond as like young people and friends and clowns. And so then when they could dance too, 3 weeks later, I was like, whoa, bonus. Like, now I like you even more. That's probably why they cast everyone in that way. Yeah. But people were so willing. And Andrew makes people so comfortable. He's so kind. Does. That was incredible. What was it like to have like a literal audience in the streets Like,
Yeah.
and did they respond to you? Did you get people who were like, stay the fuck away from me?
Yeah, we got some
like...
rude, there were some rude people, honestly, which
Yeah.
was strange. But the majority of people responded even beyond, like, what I expected. It's so clear that it takes people by surprise, or it's not something they expect to see. So their joy is sudden and, like, fleeting, but totally true and honest. And lots of children are so engaged. And one of our clowns comments often on how she feels like clowning just, like, brings out her inner child so deeply and satisfies her in that way. And often it's reflected in the interactions with children, or she always says, like, she feels like they see themselves in us in that moment, and they feel like they can really connect with us, and that there are people that are, like, on their level versus just sort of this being a small person in the stream of adults.
Right.
Which is really beautiful.
That is really beautiful. That you get to connect to someone who you don't even know. And that they're probably, like, terrified at first to see you.
Yes. But then it was this hilarious
as these beekeepers.
Yeah, it's a bit scary, but often the kids would be, like, scared for a moment, and then they would sort of leave and hide, and then it was clear they wanted to come back. Like, it's what I was just saying to you off mic too, that, like, these things that scare and excite us too are, like, the things that draw us in the most, and that's how I felt like the kids were interacting with the clowns, for sure. Yeah, it was totally scary, but it was also something that I really love about Andrew's approach, and that I've told him, I've been like, this is genius. But he really starts at the person, like the individual. And we did quite a few exercises that weren't like even clown oriented whatsoever. They were just sort of to serve the purpose of seeing each other for who we were and letting our sort of innate uniquenesses come out, observing those in each other, and then amplifying this sort of, like, magic that's already in us and making that the basis of the clown. So that it's not about, I think that's what scares me, at least, and lots of other people about clowning, is this feeling of, like, I have to put something on and it has to serve others, or it has to make other people laugh, and I can't do it. I have to, like, invent something to be funny. And that's not really how Andrew works. He's like, there is something about you already right now that exists in you that is amazing, magical, and hilarious, and you don't have to invent it. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to think about it. We just have to figure out what it is, and then we're just gonna, like, pull it out for everything it's worth. And I find it makes clowning so much more natural, and it also makes it satisfying for the performer, because it gets you to experience a part of you and validate it. And especially when it's something funny, like, for me, I'm like, the thing that they noticed in me was this sort of like intense need to, like, organize or, like, calculate.
Oh, interesting.
Or, like, yeah, so I was a beekeeper. I wasn't a bee, so I was, like, always putting them in line, and I was like, you go here and this there, and I was always, like, randomly counting on my fingers for no apparent purpose at all. And that's sort of something about myself, that tenseness or like analness about myself, that I always try and, like, no, Katie, like, put that away. Like, that's not cool. That's not chill. That's, like, that's not a good quality about myself. And so to have it seen by others and thought of as something positive and funny and totally worth exploring was so validating and awesome.
I don't want to be your therapist at all.
No,
but, like,
please be my therapist. I would love that.
This is now a therapy session.
Please tell me what you think.
What you told me earlier about how, like, you want to have all the information laid out for you. And, like, I'm also a little bit like that, where, like, I'm very type A, and, like, I want to make sure that, like, everyone else has a good time, and I'm always like, "Are you good? I'm fine. But are you good?"
Yeah.
Like, you know,
I'm like, let's talk about you.
That's why I have a podcast.
Yeah. Oh my god.
So, but, like, that character, or that, like, quality of a person coming out into a clown, like, you wouldn't think a clown would be super, like, organized and anal, you know, like, the clown would be silly and spontaneous. But it's funny when it's next to other clowns who
Yeah,
are being like
totally.
Yeah, I think that's really
Yeah.
That's cool that you like noticed that about yourself and was able to run with it rather than let it tear you apart and destroy like your process.
Going back to being at school, like, which is so weird because you get like feedback in writing.
Right.
I always get feedback in writing that's like, you're too stern. Like, you need to like lighten up.
Oh gosh.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna like, how is that person gonna also have in them like the capability to, literally my job is to be funny. And yeah, it was just such a good way to go about it, and also so healing to have somebody, because if my experience, I promise not all my report cards are like, you are so serious, lighten up. That's like a one-time thing that like
stuck with you.
Really stuck with me, and I'm like, oh my god, everybody thinks I'm so serious. But just to have that like reflected back to me as a positive quality was so healing. And the whole point of clowning is like to bring joy, and so I find it exciting that it could bring me joy as much as it could bring like audience members.
Absolutely. There's so much truth in comedy, and I feel like a lot of dancers forget that, because I think in my experience I've had to be so sophisticated about my like performance that I lose the truth almost, because I have to put on this character who's like emotionless or like in my experience, like, just alienated from the rest of the world. And so when there is a character that can be from me and, like, from who I actually am, I'm like, oh, this is safe. This feels like I can actually, like, do my best work.
Right, yeah.
I feel like Andrew had garnered that experience for you and allowed you all to, like, bring out the best in you rather than hammer down the worst.
Yes, totally. And also see the best in each other. It was such an exciting way to get to know people, to know people's like deepest quirks immediately.
Yeah. Did you do a lot of improv to start?
Oh, we did so much improv,
like,
which was so scary.
You literally learned so much about someone through improv.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you did clowning, and that was like your first project. And then did you go straight into like choreo for War of the Worlds Reimagined? Yeah,
so we were sort of doing both like at the same time, sort of back and forth, but like the people who were in the beekeeper group, we were mostly doing clowning while Colleen sort of developed, like she took her time to develop material before we fully joined.
Gotcha.
But yeah, once we started performing clowning, the training was, we had it in our back pocket, and we jumped straight into.
You were already a team.
Oh yeah, we were perfect clowns. We didn't need any more work whatsoever.
You were ready to take on an eventual alien apocalypse.
Yes, we were ready to do exactly the opposite. We were ready for war, death, and famine, and all those things.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it already, but like, yeah, the show was so thrilling and so, like, the narrative arc was just like constantly rising. And then it like ended, and I was like, oh, it's too short. Yeah, I think it's really cool that you were part of it and that you could make something that was already an audio play and that became a dance thing.
I sort of feel like I'm like part of a legacy. Like, there's so many people who were part of the work even before I joined who like I don't even know.
You didn't meet them.
I've never met them. Like, but they were also like contributors to the work, which is so interesting, and also such a like perfect example of community and collaboration and
oh my gosh,
all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it like brings so much different layering to how it's like presented. Yeah, and I think you're all great actors, not just movers. So like, I could have seen you doing the vocalization too, but like I think because Colleen was like constantly working on it. She just like brought everyone in, the whole team. Yeah, but let's move on from that, because I want to hear a little bit about your upcoming. Well, it should be presented by this point. SummerWorks Lab.
Yes.
This was something that you had started in school.
Yeah. So
at STVT.
Yeah. So when you're in your third year at STVT, you do a choreographic workshop, and it's basically like every student has to produce a work and present it in their final term. So I made a work and I presented it in my final term. Yes. Which I love doing. I love making things. And yeah, I was chosen alongside another work to sort of move forward and be presented in the SummerWorks Lab.
Is this Fred's work?
With Fred's work,
Frédérique Perron.
Yes, who I love and work closely with often. And my original work was a solo on her. And her original work was a duet on me and our other collaborator, Jamie Leggett.
Oh, yes, Jamie, yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
So we have this sort of, like, I mean, we love it, this kind of, like, isolated, like, collaboration cube.
Ooh,
where we
work with each other.
Where we work with each other because we love working with each other so much, and it just...
If it works,
it works for us.
There you go.
And it's so exciting that we get to move forward together because it feels like sort of a wonderful, like, evolution from what we started in the thing that we were cooking up at school. It's really an exciting opportunity to get to bring it forward.
So it was a solo, or sorry, it was a solo.
It was a solo, and now it's a trio.
A trio.
Yeah.
So how has that been to, like, transform it into a bigger group, and also, like, is it the same? Is it different?
Bigger group is scary for me because...
Tell me more.
Yes, I'm like, you could be my therapist again, please.
No, we're not. We're gonna do the whole thing, and then you can ask me about me.
Yeah, so...
Scary
because, I mean, the original reason it was a solo, which is definitely something I have to investigate for my own, like, emotional and mental and artistic self, is because I don't trust people. Or, like...
You're talking to the number one untrustor.
It's not because I'm, like, called to make I'm not, like, obsessed with solos. Like, there's nothing about solos in particular that I love. I just felt like... I mean, I think it was smart also just because I'm in the early phases of creating work that's being presented.
Yeah, you don't know yourself.
Yeah,
so you
I'm like, I'm like, it's too much for me to have to talk to more than one person about this. Like, I just can't hold space really for more than that, or I couldn't in that moment.
Yeah.
And I just...
And scheduling sucks.
And scheduling also. I was like, I do not want to be in a group chat where I'm like, okay, maybe next Thursday, like, we're free for 30 minutes at the same time.
Yes.
But yeah, I just felt like I'm very serious in the different sense of the word, like, about creating. Like, I really feel it very deeply. It really matters a lot to me. And it feels really sensitive to me, and I don't feel like I can hand that over to just anyone. Like, it feels so sacred.
Yeah.
And not even necessarily in terms of, like, product. Like, it's not like... I mean, I don't feel like I can hand over product. Like, I wouldn't just remount it on anyone, for example. But even just the fact of, like, sort of pouring my heart out in front of someone, or I'm trying to get over a fear of, like, saying my ideas out loud, or just, like, seeing my idea, even if I just have the instinct for it. Like, that feels vulnerable even to me. And I feel like I can only have people in the room that I really trust with my mind. Especially, like, as I said earlier, like, not in an identity way, but the bulk of my experience is in being, like, a physical body. And I've always had a sort of back and forth with feeling like that doesn't quite leave space for all of the mind that I am. And which is also why I love podcasts, because I'm like, it makes, and I love that you're doing this, because I think it makes space for artists' minds, and particularly, like, people who their art is related to their bodies, like, giving them a chance to vocalize their minds. I think it's incredible.
Thank you. That's exactly why I made it.
Yeah.
How'd you know?
But I feel really connected to my mind, and it's a sensitive place for me, so I felt like I, at least right now, like, I didn't, or at least in that moment, I didn't have it in me to reveal myself to more than one person.
Yeah. I totally understand that. Especially if it's something that is, like, so practiced within me for so long. It's like, how do I explain, like, a history of, like, my physical emotions to someone who I've just met, or someone who doesn't have the same experience as me.
Or for me, it's like somebody who the possibility even that they wouldn't hold it to the same degree of importance that I hold it.
Yes. Yeah.
Just wouldn't work for me. Like it would hurt me.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if it's something that you've taken so seriously. And like stayed up late working on.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just knew that, I know that Fred cares about, she lets her ego go. This is what I keep saying, because now I've brought in these 2 new dancers, and I think the thing that they have in common is that they're capable of letting their ego go for the sake of the work and for the common goal. It's been proved to me that there are people who can be trusted, which has really been a good lesson.
There are actually people,
even if there are only 3.
Yeah. Hey,
that's
better
good.
Than 0.
It's better than 0.
Yeah.
And I think the more that I also get to know myself, which is sort of the purpose to me, or at least like the personal purpose of participating in the SummerWorks Lab, is like it's just so exciting to get like funding and support to explore, and also to present it as an exploration. Like it's being presented as a work in progress or a work in its critical stage. And that's just so needed for me, for sure.
To not focus on product.
Yes.
And it being like a final stop.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
Yeah. It's like I'm in an exploration phase. I'm going through this thing where I'm really sensitive about what I create, and I'm like so engaged with discovering what it is that I want to make, and it only feels right that it be presented that way, or that it be labeled that way.
Right, because the title is still yet to be found, or maybe will never be found.
Yes.
Which is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Because that, for me, like when I see an untitled work, I'm like, oh, okay, you didn't have time to make a title. But at the same time, it's like there's no preconceptions about it. And so I'm literally just going in and experiencing a work, which I find to be really, really enticing.
Totally.
There's no like prerequisite about how I should feel.
Yeah.
And are you allowing the dancers to like create it with you? Like, are you giving them the like freedom to let it happen in their performance as well, or?
I mean, I would be curious to ask them what they think about that, because I feel like I work in this incredibly like detail oriented way where I'd say broad strokes, like I make the calls. Like I have a lot to say about a lot of things, and things are, I would say, like highly choreographed, or I don't want to say choreographed. I'm working with this incredible mentor who's part of this like sort of project, and Jen Goodwin, who is so awesome and is changing my world and has been so good to me. But yeah, I've been talking to her about this concept of not calling it even choreography for myself, because that doesn't quite feel right, because that just like lands it in this sort of like dance and like dance rules zone that isn't quite healthy for me, even though 100% what I'm making is dance. Like it's like it's not like postmodern, like is this really dance kind of world, but just for me,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do I say this in just a few words?
It's hard to explain.
Yeah, but just the I find it hard to, or something I'm currently working on is like differentiating between what are like choreographic rules that have been imposed on me or sort of like drilled into me over my life and history in the dance world, and what is it that I actually want to make? Like, where do those, is this my instinct because of something that I've been brainwashed to think will make it look like good dance, or is this my instinct because this is me art making?
Ooh, huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
And so I think something about just like removing the need to call it choreography at all has been healthy for me, and think of it more as like, this is something I'm making, and the medium is bodies and time.
Right.
But it's not necessarily or I try as much as possible to step away from my sort of prescription of this is what I need to do to make a good choreography.
Did you find that switch like coming out of school? Because like for me, when I was in school, I was like, oh, I'm making an assignment. I'm making a work so that people can judge it and give it a grade. And that was horrid for me, and it made me hate going to school most days. Because I feel like now that you're out of that institutionalized, this is what dance should be, like, I mean, I'm hoping you have more freedom to, like, play with the different mediums and not let it just be choreography.
I mean, I think it really became apparent to me just while making the solo, because I would I get in this way where I, like, I get kind of stuck, like, while I'm making something, like, in the room, I'm like, I need to stop. We need to stop making things now. And I found that was, like, really happening, like, a lot. And so I started questioning, I'm like, I need to know why this is happening to me. And I think it's because it was becoming clear that I was stopping myself before I could start, because I was scared of not living up to those rules. Like, there was this really significant moment to me that I, like, reference back to all the time, where I was having one of these stuck moments, and I told Fred, I'm like, I'm just so stuck right now, and I feel like I can't keep going because you haven't gone to stage left at all yet. Which sounds like, now even hearing that, I'm like, that sounds so silly, because it's so far removed from, like, how I'm working now. But it was just like, something in me was like, she has to be on. You have to use the whole stage. You have to use the whole stage. Yeah. She has to use the floor. She has to go up. She has to go down. Like, whatever. So I don't know. There has to be sections. The sections have to be different. They have to last a certain amount of time. Like, she can't do anything for too long. I just had all these rules built up, and so at one point I just said that out loud, like, sort of casually, while I was stuck. I was like, well, you haven't gone stage left yet, and right now I have the urge to keep you over here, but I feel like I have to bring you stage left. And she just said to me, like, why do I have to go stage left?
She's checking in with you.
She told me what was up. Back. She was like, why do I have to go stage left? And I was like, well, I just feel like you have to go stage left in order for this work to be complete. And so that in that moment, it started bringing to my attention, because she just, like, asked me the question so bluntly, why do I have to go stage left? And the answer was, because I feel like that's what's needed to make good choreography. And then, of course, why is that what's needed to make
good choreography?
Yeah, good choreography.
Yeah,
and
what's good?
Yeah, what's good choreography, and why does it involve stage left? Like, what does that have to do with anything? And so
my next work is only going to be on stage right, and I hope you come.
Right. Oh my god, that's so funny. But yeah, it just brought to my attention all of the rules that I tell myself, and it started to, like, expand far beyond just stage left. Like, there was so much that I was telling myself had to be inside of it for it to be good. And I felt like I started unpacking that while I was making the solo. It sits in one image for a long time, or not sits in, it moves through one image for a long time, and I allow it to, and I celebrate that image instead of worrying about everything that it's not, or everything that it's not doing. And in fact, Jen, my mentor, says to me often, like, the thing that's special about this work is everything that it's not doing, because everything that you're not doing is making a statement, and it makes the things that you do so much more powerful. It's almost like choosing not to do certain things is, like, so strongly a choice that it, like, sits on stage with you, like, and it's in the air. And so I feel like that's a full, like, an important element of the work I'm presenting now is just, like, this full freedom jumping into, like, the abandonment of the rules, and allowing myself to fully dive into one thing, and, like, letting myself be there, letting the dancers be there, letting the audience be there, so that we can just appreciate something without judging it for everything that it's not. I don't know.
Hence the, like, format of its bodies in time. Like, there isn't, from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, there isn't, like, a set theme that you should feel watching it, or that you, as the audience, should, like, expect. It's that we experience it together. Sort
of, yeah. It's like my interest in terms of, I mean, I feel like I just laid out my sort of, like, emotional approach, but my like compositional and sort of, like, artistic interests lie in the way that when someone walks into a room, it might change sort of the feeling in the room, and we can feel it in our bodies too, and it's like it feels so real. That, but like to an incredibly extreme extent where it's like, what does like an incredibly detail-oriented and well-researched like movement score, how does it accomplish that? So how does a certain tone or quality in the body, or like direction of the body or transformation of the body, changing like the quality of the room? How can we accomplish an atmospheric change when the only thing that's really going on is bodies in time?
I think I'm understanding, because I feel like I do need to see it.
Totally.
To experience it. And that's 100%. Again, like, part of what you're making is like being there.
Yeah.
It's not virtual. It's not a film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like dance pieces that had to be films because of the pandemic, but I feel like this one wouldn't work as a film.
And I did a lot of film, and I felt like, I feel like that grounded me in sort of the confidence to do art making.
Cool.
This is totally live and in person and real.
We need more of that.
Yeah, we do.
And I feel like as you're going through the process and, you know, discovering exactly what it is and like allowing yourself the liberation to like stick true to what you just said, is that like it is enough to just be in an image for a long time. I was busking last week at the Fringe Festival, where I gave myself a task to like basically repeat the same move over and over until someone dropped a coin. So one of the tasks that I did was like I was on my hands and knees, and one leg was like bending and stretching up into the air.
Oh my god, hamstring.
20 minutes.
Okay.
No one dropped a coin.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was sitting in this being like, this is so boring to watch after 19 minutes.
Right.
Like, does anyone want to look at this anymore? But I was experiencing this like emotional feeling, and I think that's what brought someone up, is that like we're in this durational image for so long as an audience and a performer. That's enough to like evoke something. And it was a lot of pain, but in my end, but it was like, I think that's hopefully what you're trying to describe is like just like being together in a duration and not letting it like have to change.
Yeah. And what is it, something too that I'm talking with the interpreters a lot about is what it is to be in something that's sort of understated compositionally, but keeping the room electric. Like, what is it that you have to do to keep this entirely alive and engaging? Yeah. And that is so, like, I feel like as an audience member, it makes, oh my gosh, it makes a performer just like shine and scream at you that they can, like, their virtuosity and being able to keep you with them.
Do you have any set or props or any external factors to it?
I don't.
Or is it really bodies?
I had, it's really bodies because I had, in the original solo, I worked with, prop, but it was more like extended costume. We had sheets attached to her wrists that sort of dragged behind her throughout. Oh, okay. And that played, originally the sort of like conceptual image was more centered around weight, and it was about sort of her journey in bringing the audience along convincingly enough to feel like the sheets were like incredibly weighted. We also used projection. It was great, and I loved what we did, but I was sort of feeling like, what can I do without any external factors? And so that sort of as just a personal challenge for myself, that there's no like wow factors beyond the challenge of creating dance. Because I'm sort of in this space, which I feel like I was even thinking of it when you were reflecting on War of the Worlds, and we were both sort of speaking to it, but this sort of like, why are we dancing right now? Or like, why do we need movement for this? Yes. That's totally on my mind right now. I was like, why are we dancing?
Cool.
Why are we doing this at all? And
why do people do this to their bodies?
And I'm like literally obsessed with them. Like my life's mission is to do this, but I'm like, why are we? But at the same time, it's like, why do we do this? Like this is so random.
Yes, yeah. And no one walks around like this.
No,
in the real world.
And it's so hilarious, especially because like when I think of what I make, I'm like, it's more the theme of this podcast is I'm very serious or whatever, but it's like it's a little bit more. Serious or with like a slightly, I don't want to say dark tone, but just like a more serious tone. And Fred and I laugh all the time because we're like goofy with each other or whatever, but we're making this like very serious dance. And so we're just like constantly back and forth between this, like, this is so important. This is like life or death important. Like whether your pinky finger is in this spot or whether it's in that spot, like it feels so truly serious and important to us. But then we can also just break and we can be like, this is so funny. Like this is so random. But just because that's on my mind, I sort of wanted to be like, okay, so what is this dance thing for me? Like what if this is so important to me? Like I want to understand why, and I want to understand what I can do with it without putting anything else on top of it. And like how does it speak for itself?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting that you're like just now thinking of that or outside of school, like because I feel like a lot of dance artists go through their career having to feel like they have to be like full out with feeling 100%, keep dancing until I drop.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
That's not healthy.
No.
It's not going to last.
Yeah.
And it's not that entertaining sometimes,
No.
you know? Like, I think that's really quite a profound thought as you're creating, like allowing yourself to like really question, like, why do we need to move right now?
Yeah.
Whereas we could just be experiencing something
Right.
or listening or speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what, I'm like, tell me about you. Like, when you make something, what is your thought process around there? How do you relate, like, the need to move?
There's a project I worked on during school when I was at Toronto Metropolitan where I used, like, a song from a musical. Okay. Which already is very heightened.
It's loaded.
It's very, like, why are they singing?
Right.
It's really the question
right.
of that.
Why are we doing any of this, actually? It's so random.
Why is silence not what we're doing?
Yeah. We should just do nothing.
Yeah. And so I was like, why would I add dance to something that's already so emotionally heightened and like they're literally singing like in belting octaves and
are you also like incredibly sensitive, like because I feel like this is a quality of like, I don't want to say overly, but just like extremely sensitive people where we're just like, we need to not add to the mess or like the extremity. I'm like, we need to neutralize this.
Oh, that's
so I totally understand that urge to be like, why would I make this more intense? It's already so intense.
I don't want the audience to feel like they have to,
I don't want to overwhelm you guys.
Exactly. That's exactly my thought. And like there was a whole narrative to this piece and so I was trying to like find ways to like enter and exit but that didn't feel like too dancey and movementy. And I think I tried to accomplish it. However, the piece never got put on stage because of the pandemic.
Right.
But I always thought about that, like, if I'm already working with music or if I'm already working with a piece of art that could stand alone, why do I need to add dance to it? Same thing for, like, like a visual art. You were talking about visual art earlier. Like, if we're looking at a painting, do I need to then see it, like, through movement and, like, see the brush strokes of the painter? Or could that, like, two-dimensional painting live by itself? So this idea of, like, why do we add to things if they're already fully formed? But at the same time,
why not?
This is the thing. Like, I think I already think art is dead. Like, I already think we've like
oh my gosh,
done everything that we could have done.
Totally.
So I will continue to add on because I hope that an audience member can see both layers to a piece or many layers to a piece and not just be like, I'm here to watch dance. Like, oh no, I'm here to watch dance with a score of music, possibly, with maybe some live musicians, maybe with some singers. Maybe there's a acting scene that's a part of it. Maybe there's someone who sculpts on stage. Like, throwing in different mediums around it doesn't actually like hurt it. It just adds to it, hopefully.
Or even it just reminds me of what we were saying about Colleen in War of the Worlds earlier, like that she found so much fulfillment out of going through all of those layers of process and how it felt so full circle once she got to like, what is it, like the fourth or fifth one, and that she would have never found that fulfillment had she not gone through every step. It's like, okay, you have a radio play, like why are you going to make another thing? It's like,
right,
because it's fulfilling, because it adds to
and
the
I
joy
think
of life.
It worked.
And
some
it worked.
things
hers worked.
don't work. Yeah. I was gonna say, like,
Totally.
I think it takes a kind of special person to be able to do that. Because I've seen dance works that are
Totally.
just
Some
like,
dance is so bad.
so bad.
No offense.
Because we could say it's bad because like that was my experience of watching it. Because I do think there's bad art. I don't think there's good art, but I do think there's bad art.
What do you mean you don't think there's good art? What does that mean?
I think art can never be good.
I'm like mine has to be good. What do you mean?
But that's the rules that have been put into
totally.
you.
Yeah, maybe you know good is, I need to, I'm deconstructing my word choreography, so maybe I need to also deconstruct my word good, because I totally use good and bad, like, so loosely. I even, because I was bringing in new dancers for this process,
yes,
I even warned them. We did this sort of room agreement at the beginning of it, inspired by Alyssa Martin, who introduced that to a room that I was in.
Love Alyssa.
And we did a room agreement, and I was like, just so you know, like, I use good and bad, like, every 2 minutes. I'm like, that was good or that was bad, because it just is so natural to me to sort of, like, qualify things that way.
Yeah, and, like, move on afterwards.
Yeah, like, it feels, like, easy to just be like, that was bad, it's not gonna work. But I, of course, in the room agreement, I, of course, was like, you guys are the best dancers I've ever seen in my life. Like, no hard feelings, but what I made was bad.
Right.
But I'm not sure.
Happen.
I don't know, I'm intrigued by your, like, there's no good.
Well, I think that, like, especially with live art, like, it's not good. Like, there's stuff that have made me feel impacted or have made me remember it afterwards. But I still feel like someone could look at it and be like, no, that was shitty. Like another person.
I feel like it's more like, it's subjective.
Oh, very subjective.
Yeah, but do you mean that there's some art that's, like, objectively bad?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
You don't think anyone could think it was good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I could sit in that. Hopefully.
Okay. I'm enough to it. I don't have an argument.
I should just say it so you don't have to stand
I don't
for it.
have, like, an argument against it in any way. I'm just, like, curious to hear.
If something is objectively bad, like, it is just, like, surface level, there's nothing that could be redeemed from it.
Okay.
It's important that we deem it as bad. Kind of like what Alyssa was saying.
Okay.
Like, it's bad. Let's move on and try something new. Let's try it again. It didn't work in that time and place. However, it could work in a different time and place. So it was bad in the moment, not necessarily meaning that it had to be, like, bad forever. And I mean that specifically with live art.
Okay.
But I'm going to just sit in that, and hopefully it makes sense.
No, I like it. It's like a fight in the comments. Everyone's like, there's no such thing.
At me if you disagree.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's so... Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, but it's refreshing to hear your opinion. Totally.
Oh no! Now I've gained some enemies throughout this podcast. No, but I feel like I think you're one of those artists, and obviously I've only known you for a little bit of time. But when we met doing the Common Ground Dance Festival, I felt like you had such a great understanding of, like, process and how to, like, make something happen, even if it was going to take, like, lots of angst and pain. Oh. And I just want to congratulate you on making all these works this summer and staying busy throughout, a pandemic and craziness.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's totally easy to... I feel like I've mentioned, like, the concept of ego and stuff a few times, too. Like, I think it's easy to get into ego, especially when you're in a sensitive place, like, coming out of school. It's, like, so... Everyone's so, like, hyper sensitive for sure. And I just try and stay out of, like... which I totally appreciate your congratulations on busyness, but, like, try and stay out of, like, that being a validation or totally sinking too far into, like, hustle culture. Like, I'm grinding so hard and that makes me better or worse than anybody else. I'm just trying to, like, ride the wave and, yeah.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Grind those avocados.
Grind those, the grind, I'm grinding so hard.
Where can people find you? If I want to learn more about your overly sensitive grind.
Oh, that's actually perfect. I need to, like, change my bio to, like, the overly sensitive grind. Oh my god, that's so funny. You can find me, like, on Instagram, maybe. Katie Adams-Gossage is my name.
I'll link it below.
Yeah, some other places. Amazing. Me and Fred always make jokes about our YouTube channels. We have like...
You have one?
Well, I mean, just like with my dance, like with like dance footage and stuff.
It.
But you can you can be like my 4th subscriber.
I will be all
It's
your
just like where
subscribers.
all my dance content is. You could totally
Great.
look at that if you want to see like me dancing or dances I've made. I mean, Pilgrim's Passage is there.
Sweet.
And I think eventually the Untitled work will be there.
Great.
Yeah.
And at this point, people won't be able to get tickets, but hopefully people will come to see Entitled, in brackets, Bodies in Time.
Yeah.
Good luck with all that.
Thanks so
I'm
much.
excited to see it after hearing about how the process has been for you.
Totally.
And how it's transformed. Yeah.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I
don't want to end.
I know, I don't want to end either. I would like to, before we end, I would like to reiterate, like, my appreciation for you creating this and having this platform. And also, it just feels like such a true, like, manifestation of your being. It's so cool and inspiring that you pursue minds and that you let your mind like take up space and let other minds take up space. It's
Thanks,
it's so awesome.
That means a lot.
Of course.
I'm glad that you also listen to podcasts.
Oh yeah, I'm totally oversensitive mind grind.
You mind grind.
That's me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Art Versations podcast. Please help the podcast community continue to grow by clicking subscribe or follow on your podcast platform and leave a review. As well, follow the podcast on Instagram at ArtVersationsPod. You'll find photos of the guests you just heard, plus highlights and quotes from each episode. Let's keep the Art Versation going. Send in a DM with your thoughts about art and any questions you might have for guests. Special thank you goes out to Jen Marquez and Maxim Bartnowski for their contributions. And thank you, listener. Till next time.